This episode of the Council of the First Ones was recorded on Sunday, January 26th, 2020.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Council of the First Ones. I'm your host, Kelly. Joining me today is my brother from another mother, Renee. How are you doing?
That's a compliment, right? Yeah. I'm doing fine,
yes,
Kelly.
it is.
Oh, I'm doing fine. I've been enjoying my collectibles, enjoying my Filmation figures and my movie figures and my Mega Constructs. You know, MOTU's back. What can I say? I'm happy.
They said it was coming back in 2020, and so far they haven't lied. Also joining us is Sean.
Hi, glad to be back, everybody.
What have you been up to lately?
I have been reading the Masters of the Multiverse comic, actually, this week. I wasn't able to get my hands on it when it actually came out, but was really happy to read it because 2000X especially, because that's my jam. I've said it a few times before, but I was so happy to go back to Eternia through the Mike Young Productions eye. So very happy with that.
Also, we have David joining us.
Hello, great to be here again.
Great to have you also.
Hey, everyone.
Yeah, there he is.
Oh, okay, there he is.
Party. How are you doing, Rex?
Wonderful.
And I've got to give a special shout out to this next person. It's been so long since we've heard him. Hurricanes and earthquakes can't put a damper on this MOTU guy. And Chuck Danielle, who turned around and set Adora up with Seahawk. And I know he's still crying. Our friend Crespo.
I'm here only because they promised me that Spectre would get his butt kicked.
Well, come on, we all like watching Spectre get his butt kicked.
Yeah, we could have gotten like 35 pages of it, but at least the Guy Gardner treatment was great.
And Dave, I see you brought a good friend of the council with you.
Well, yes, I'm so happy that Dan was able to join us for a third time to talk about, to geek out over Multiverse. He's the artist for issue 3, and yeah, I'm so happy he's able to make it. Hi, Dan.
Hey, what's happening, gang? Glad to be here. Really glad to be here. Thanks for having me on again.
I gotta repeat it because before we have our recording, I had to say not enough artwork, not enough pages, because that means that I needed more. This issue was so mind blowing. It's become my favorite. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You know, this is.
Oh, excellent.
I just needed way more out of this.
Some crazy moments when Tim first sent me the script and I read it. I was definitely blown away, especially a lot of the key moments, a lot of the developments, especially being able to kind of extend upon the 2000X universe and show us what's been going on with them, and exploring our little character world with Keldor and bringing him in and exploring more through the lens of another Skeletor. It was very, very fun to do.
I wore my rubber pants like you told me to, and I was not disappointed. Let me tell you that much. The fact that you let me have that little nugget of going, yeah, we're gonna take some time with this world and take some time with the 2000X. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking through the issue, and I'm like, oh, you delivered your promise to me about this, because
big time.
Thank you.
It was such a nice, like. The way you rendered everything really made me it made me so happy for that line. It made me so happy for that continuity. But on top of that, even with the story, I was just like, oh, you guys pulled that one off. I really enjoyed it.
Well, thanks, man. When we're sitting alone in our studios doing our part, it always feels good down the line to know that our efforts are appreciated.
Oh, definitely.
Well, I've been hearing a lot of great feedback about the last issues too, and your appearance on our show. So yeah, it's absolutely, your work is appreciated.
No, the one thing I really wanted to say, I didn't get to say it the last time because Tim and you both being on, I didn't want to go too crazy asking questions or whatever. But the one thing I've heard a lot of is how well done the New Adventure Skeletor was in issue 2. And I know we brought it up last time too, but the one panel especially where he took off his helmet, you did so much to convey the pain of that character with how you rendered that to this day, I think that's one of the shining moments in this up to issue 3 so far is you managed to make that character resonate with people in a continuity that normally is not the most accepted community of the Masters line. Mm-hmm. And it really was
I know what
cool...
you mean. I'll tell you I'm an avid fan and studier of comic book artists that I enjoy. And Todd McFarlane being one of the guys, especially in my youth. And in one of his interviews, he had mentioned drawing things. You know, someone asked what his secret was, and they said he draws things to entertain himself. Because when you're sitting in a room for 10, 12 hours working on the same piece of artwork, you need everything you can to keep you there. It's not just get it done and move on. You want to make sure it's something that you yourself, when you're done with it, are like, yeah, that's cool, you know. And because I'm part of that audience that New Adventures, man. I was at 91. I graduated high school in 91, so I had stepped out of anything to do with toys and was working hard becoming a comic book artist. So all my focus was there. So I wasn't even aware of New Adventures. And then when I worked at Mattel, I saw some New Adventure stuff and I said, what the heck is this stuff? And then I saw, you know, some of the characters and some of the animation, because that was my department. And I thought it was kind of, I don't want to use that, like, I don't want to say it was hokey or anything like that, but it just didn't give me the same feelings that the Filmation stuff did.
Sure.
And when the time came to drawing New Adventures, we were announcing the book at PowerCon, and I had just finished my layouts for the issue, and I knew moments how I wanted them to feel as far as the storytelling was concerned, but I didn't really have the aesthetic down yet. And when I was at PowerCon, I managed to buy not the classics version, but the actual version of the Skeletor from New Adventures. It was stupid expensive. It was like $70. It's still in the package.
Yeah.
And I studied that thing. I looked at all the nooks and crannies and was like, okay, this is what this guy is. And then I searched on eBay and found the classics version of him and said, wow, that actually gives me sort of a thrill. Like looking at that version gave me like that excitement, that feeling I was looking for. So what I wanted to do is interject as much of that essence of that feeling that I could into that Skeletor, and that process is what ended up, like I said, he's out of everything that I've had to draw in the series, he was definitely my favorite because of the process I had to go through. You know, it's like some characters, if you threw me on, say, you know, Spider-Man with the Green Goblin story, you don't have to need a microscope to find. I mean, you need a microscope to find the bit of me that doesn't care, because I love that so much. So finding finding something that I had no connection to, and transforming my feelings into something that I cared so much about that, like, now I have passion for it. To me, that's, I don't know, it made it all worth it.
Yeah, you can tell in that pan. I loved it. I was very impressed by it. So I really wanted to say that last time. So I'm really glad I got to say it now.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
Well, and it's fun that you're using Disco Skeletor in this issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was funny, but like I said, have you guys looked at his boots? That's like,
you know, that was like the first thing, because you kept talking about the boots, and yes, I can imagine the work that, like, did you actually buy? Tell me, because part of me would feel sorry.
I had to buy one.
Oh, you did.
I had to. I did midway through. But as you guys could see, like, I only did the first 11 pages of the third issue. And as David knows, I did the layouts for the whole thing. So, Tom graciously finished up the issue over my layouts, and did his thing. But like, for me, the moments that, like, even in layout phase that gave me like the feels, so to speak, is killing Tapper's a Grayskull, skewering that little guy. And then the moment he had with Tila, it's like Tim did his work to earn that, and I felt like when I drew it, I felt kind of sad,
Yeah.
And it's just weird. It's like I don't know other comic artists that have had to do this, but I feel kind of like a comic book serial killer. And if they had a Roger Rabbit thing, I think I would be on their like hit list of, get this guy, he's taking out 8 of our guys. So yeah, I feel like, oh great, each issue I kill a couple people, and but at least this time I got to pass it off to Tom.
Nice.
Tom got to,
so now he's an
he got to do
accomplice.
the deed.
Right.
He is. I basically sent him the photo and the weapon and do this.
Yeah. Take him out.
Well, hey,
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for sharing the layout art for this issue with me, so I could share it on adultcollector.org. Thank you so much. That was a real treat.
My pleasure. I like people being able to see the process. I found that the fact that I have always used this process since probably the late 90s, early 2000s, even when I did Wolverine and Black Panther for Marvel, I would lay out the whole issue first. And a lot of guys don't work that way. Like I was talking to a guy named Mark Bagley, who's a Spider-Man artist.
Yeah.
And he told me the way he works is he gets up, he reads the script that page that day and draws that page, and then he's done. And he just goes straight forward. He draws it as he goes. And that's definitely a way, but for me, I've always liked to see I like to have control over moments. So if something is going to feel big in a certain part, I like to draw back a little bit and really try to set things up. Sometimes as far back as 4 or 5 pages, I'll set something up that may not be obvious, but it could just be in the sizing I use of a character. Let's say I draw this character no bigger than, on the printed page, no bigger than 3 inches. It could be a close-up, it's still 3 inches, or it could be a full body, it's 3 inches. But then you get to page 5 where there's a dramatic moment, and suddenly they're 5 inches. All of a sudden, it seems so much bolder. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's the reason that process worked out for me is that Mattel, they like to see everything first. So they want the script written out, scripted. They want to see the layouts complete. They want to see the storytelling before you go forward with the pencils. They want to see pencils before you go forward with the inks, and so forth. So I was very fortunate to have already been doing that, because for some guys, they're like, I don't do that. I don't lay out the whole book. Are you crazy? No, I don't work that way. But that happens to be the way I work. And for, the opportunity to share it with people, to me is exciting, because it gives, I always say this regarding my show that I have on YouTube and the interviews I do. There are a million ways to skin a cat, and the creativity comes in different forms. And let's say you have 10 people that want to draw. Let's say that of those 10 people, one of those people can watch an interview or a tutorial and get absolute, none of those people can get absolutely nothing from it. But that one person, it lights their life up, and they become the next big thing because of that grain of information. I like to be able to provide as much perspective as possible in the creative process, that if it inspires somebody down the line, then it's totally worth it.
I want to point out here, when you talked about the process and the artwork, the first thing I got out of the issue, when I turned the pages and I'm looking at it, you put one group together that, to me, realized, wow, it was so amazing. You put all the cosmic enforcers
that
together.
was fun. That was a lot of fun. A lot of fun to draw those characters. It was neat to put them in a way, and I'll tell you again, one of the things that I try to do, and again, I'm going to reference Todd McFarlane again because he's one of those guys that I really dig, and he has great philosophies. Like if you're a Bruce Lee fan because you like his movies, you'll be a bigger fan of Bruce Lee because of his philosophies, and that's how I feel about McFarlane in certain aspects. Like he was saying that when he did Spider-Man, he was trying to tap into his recollection of what Steve Ditko had done, but not necessarily look at it, right? He didn't go and look at it and reference it. He said he tried to remember what the essence of it was. So when I did the Cosmic Enforcers, I was thinking about Mike Mignola's run on Cosmic Odyssey and the way he handled things. And I was thinking about these sort of more, and in my mind, I remembered a lot of vertical layouts. So what I wanted to do when I drew them is show them in a very tall format. And that's why I chose to make it vertical is because, again, like I was trying to tap into something, a recollection or a feeling.
It worked out really well. I like that huge close-up of Zodac's eye.
Yeah,
and
well, that is from Tim's script. He actually said that.
Oh, really?
Close-up of
Nice.
Zodac's eye. That's exactly what he said.
And
that's a part of the fan, that's a part I wanted to mention was that part of his mystique was his face, and that was very artistic to me. I thought, wow, you understood, that's clearly defining Zodac, that weird mask.
Yeah. I'd like to see a comic with their adventures. I think that would
Agreed.
be cool.
Agreed,
Definitely.
yeah.
Well, and there's this differing opinion with He-Man fans, who is Zodac? Is he a good guy, bad guy? Is he, is he truly neutral? And that goes back
he
to
above
how
all of good and bad.
Yeah,
it's like that whole. There's that. I forget how the story goes, but it like they say, guy breaks his leg bad, goes to the hospital, meets a woman that's his wife, that becomes his wife, good. They have a child that has cancer, bad. The cancer, the kid dies, but the research saves 1,000 lives, good. You see what I'm saying? Like that whole idea, like there are concepts of, I think, of good and bad behavior. And I think what those boil down to, if we're going to get slightly philosophical, it's that all evil comes from selfishness and all good comes from selflessness. So you know what I'm saying? Like if you think about when someone steals something, it boils down to a selfish notion that I deserve this more than they do, so therefore I'm going to take it. I want to feel this way, therefore I'm going to do this. Or my feeling of anger is more important than this person's life, therefore I'm going to take it. It's all boils down to selfishness. Whereas selflessness is acts of courage, love, things like that, where you put something before yourself or before your own comforts. And anyway, that's how Fraga Boone's definition of good and bad.
Nice.
Yeah. Like as a character, Zodac's one of those characters that for some people he's really cool or he's not. And it's the attachment to him from when you were a kid. Was he a character you picked up and played with him more than maybe some of the others? And the problem with that character, the way he's designed in that story now, the overall story of Masters, is he's a philosophical character like that. So he's a hard one to pin down. When you're a kid, it's not quite, you can't grasp those concepts. But now that we're older, and now that we're older, we're looking at him on the shelf going, we have all these philosophical concepts going through our heads looking at him, but we couldn't figure that out when we were 5,
Right.
It's an amazing, he's one of those characters that he's an acquired taste, but once you understand what he's about, he will open your mind to all these ideas of what the good versus evil aspect of him and the neutrality of him to tip the scale if one side needs the other assistance or whatever. He's interesting for that, but he wasn't like you could sit there as 5 and talk about these philosophical discussions with He-Man, and He-Man go, "I'm just going to kick Skeletor's butt." He'd walk off, and that's the end of it.
Right.
I wanted to point out it's really cool that there's a female Zodac that's included in the gang named Apocrypha. Dan, you pointed this out on your... Wait, was it Tim that pointed this out? No, it was Tim. Yeah. That in the background, I believe, the blue Zodac, not Strobo, but the one to the left of him is named Apocrypha, which is the definition of that is works usually written of unknown authorship or of doubtful origin.
Yep.
And and Tim noted on his Twitter, he said that he totally made that character up because we need some ladies around here.
It's true.
Well, it is about time to have a female cosmic enforcer. Whose idea was
She might
that
have always been there. The design work was basically Tim saying, it's like this meets this, and then I draw it up, you know?
Yeah,
His
makes
words,
sense.
my pictures.
There you go.
Because you mentioned like Strobo, and Strobo, was, I clearly see him, and I see the figure.
Yeah,
I see
course.
the classic, the complete, which, it's beautiful. Thank you, compared to his only one appearance in the magazine, and so when I saw that, I'm like, wow, okay, I know where these guys are from. You got the 2000X Zodac was one of my favorites. I loved him.
Yeah.
And then I saw the female, and I'm like, oh, what's that story about? Oh, and that's kind of why I like this issue so much, because there's more to it, and the fact that you and Tim didn't cover what happened to the Cosmic Enforcers, builds up more of the story, because I'm waiting for Crespo to do comments on the Mighty Spectre, but I'm still, part of it was like, oh, they didn't show us what happened. They didn't show us the fight. I'm like, oh, what happened here? That's
the thing is like they gave the idea in the series 6 issues, and it's an incredible task for Tim to basically compress the amount of ideas. But what's great, like, he's very successful in that you are excited about what's happening off panel, basically, which is one of those things that is thrilling about comic books, is that we get excited about something that doesn't actually exist. We're excited about the potential of it, and I think that's pretty amazing that Tim was able to pull that off.
Man, just looking through these, how you laid out the pages, I just can't see anybody like deciding to say, okay, I'm going to work on page 1, page 2, without a plan of action like what you do.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think a plan is definitely the way to go.
And it's wonderful what you did with Tila. I mean, it came together so perfectly, that, like you were talking about, that scene or that page where she's standing over Tapper's dying, he's dying and she's crying. I mean, that's such great dialogue, and it's just put together perfectly.
Yeah, Tim definitely did his thing. I was really bummed to not be able to draw those pages, but like I said, I feel like Tom did a fantastic job of taking over and doing those layouts justice.
And I was thinking of how the layouts, it can be confusing with so many different He-Men, characters in one comic. And there are a ton of characters in this issue. Oh my God! On that same that same page, I might as well mention that there's this one panel where you've got Anti-Eternia He-Man, his head, and the 2000X characters are ready to fight him, and then he ends up destroying Castle Grayskull right in front of their eyes. And it turns out that there's some small error there where it's Snake Armor He-Man. He's standing there, but he's got the black Anti-Eternia He-Man word bubble saying, "You're making this fun." And so I'm pretty sure, looking at your layout, I'm pretty sure you intended that to be Anti-Eternia He-Man standing there, not Snake Armor He-Man.
Yeah, I haven't to go over the stuff with a fine tooth comb like Tim and Mike did, but that's a bummer. Good cat.
And I'm sure, it takes a moment, but I'm sure people get that. Oh, right, it was supposed to be anti-attorney He-Man. So,
Yeah.
So it's a minor thing, really.
Hey, at least they're it's not like the movie Cat.
Well, I'm excited about the issue. I don't know if anyone can hear me right now.
Yeah, we got you now.
Oh, we got you.
Okay, good. Finally, I've been dying to thank Dan for that beautiful image of Spectre getting his butt kicked. But before that, the trippy-looking space with the Cosmic Enforcers and Spectre showing up in a weird way kind of reminds me a bit of Steranko.
Oh man, that is extremely high compliment. Holy crap, man! Thank you. I love Steranko, the man. Thank you. That's very kind.
You're welcome. And when y'all were mentioning tiny nitpicks, I did notice a slight mistake on page 7. Beastman's bicep guard is missing. I know it's a tiny complaint, but
is
just
it really?
pointing out. Yeah.
That's my fault. That's my fault then. If it's not there,
I just noticed, like, browsing through the book, I'm like, wait.
All right. Well, here's the thing then. If we meet each other in person, you bring me your He-Man comic. I'll draw the thing on that for you.
There you
Don't
go.
worry, it won't go on easy. I'm gonna keep that. No, but this issue has been amazing to look at. The story it has some vibes. Reminds me of the movie with Jet Li, but with a He-Man twist. But it's the art that's driving me crazy. Like looking at the details, at the references, Spectre getting his butt kicked.
It's so funny because Tim, when I drew Spectre, I'm like, heck is this character? I was like, I'd never seen him before, and I'm like, he looks like he's like a reject from some other toy line. Like, what is he?
He's negative
like,
Deadpool.
Yeah, we get to kill him, so we're like.
Was there a discussion about the character?
What's that?
Was there, when you guys were drawing him or roundtabling, did he just tell you, here's Spectre, or was there a discussion about that character? Because just keep in mind, for MOTU, he's kind of an obscure character.
No, I know he is, but from what I recall from talking with Tim is that he is a much loathed character, much like the Star Wars Jar Jar Binks.
Right. That's a good comparison. I really felt like you were trading capers for him. Like one guy you really, one character you wanted to kill off for another.
Yeah, keep the balance of things.
Oh, maybe that was Zodac's doing. I see.
But I have one question. I know you did the line art, so you might be able to answer this. On page 15, the woman in the shadows, I guess you'd say, is that supposed to be She-Ra still trapped? Because I know my friends and I, because we were like, wait, when we zoom in, it looks like it could be, or it could be Teela.
No, it's not. Definitely not She-Ra. Definitely zero. If there's any resemblance of any She-Ra anything, that is completely unintentional. There's no She-Ra.
Oh, when you
sorry to disappoint.
You mean the character that was being transported to the battlefield?
Yeah.
Yeah,
where it was really hard even zooming in, we were debating it, pulling out action figures, everything.
I think it's Teela materializing and the tiara appearing on her head.
Yeah.
Well, the part that I got to say, since we're talking about Teela, I love the beautiful artwork. On page 9, that's when we first see her. And I know she, based on hints and our discussions, I knew Teela was going to have a bigger part to play in this issue. Was there any discussion on her? Her facial, to me, her design is there. You nailed the 2000X look, but her face just came out so strong in that. Was your intention to do that?
Yeah, you know what? I keep going back to under the hood stuff for you guys. As an artist, I feel like my I say my biggest wishes start with L. So likeness, lettering, and ladies. I always feel like I don't draw as well as I draw men. So with Tila, I was hyper focused on trying to make sure she's as pretty as I could make her, and be as true to her and her essence as I possibly could be. So that's what it is. I think I was just hyper focused on making sure she looked good.
Yeah, she turned out great.
I mean, really, it is. I think her facial expressions were the most powerful out of that issue. You know, like she really conveys emotion out of all the characters. You know, I know you drew issue 9, and then there's the later outline, and both of them, you know, in those big scenes that she had were really powerful. Like from one panel to the, I kept looking at the panels, and I was like, the big difference.
Yeah, I think the person on our team that has the biggest love for Tila is Tim. I think that might have been his secret girlfriend when he was 12. You know, that's like if I had to write like a Wonder Woman story, I would make it all about Linda Carter.
There you go.
So yeah, I mean these moments that, and also like I always think about like how there's the perception, you know, He-Man was for kids, and in a certain degree, you got to be sort of lighthearted in the way the story is being told because of the roots of it. But at the same time, like, I don't know, these moments, and then I know Tim wrote them this way. They're like respecting the characters in a more sort of authentic and real way.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think we wanted to make sure that the characters felt as authentic as possible.
To me, that's the equivalent of, you know, like you watch a Disney movie, for instance, and most people would be like, oh, it's a cartoon, maybe. But then, you know, when you go to see it, there's these layers that you might not expect. And like, there's movies where, you know, like as a 40-some-year-old man, I'll sit there and get misty-eyed going like, wow, you know, like they managed to make me care about this. So, I mean, you guys pulled that off beautifully with how that scene was, because, you know, like that's one of those moments that for fans, we've always had that question of, well, you know, in material after filmation and stuff, there is this push of Tila and He-Man and Adam are destined to just be together just because she's the girl and he's the guy. But the way that you sum that part up between the words and the layouts and the illustrations, it really did get, it was such a nice, almost like, you know, Clark Kent revealing he's Superman to her, you know, and in that way. And I really appreciated that we had a touch of that finally in the mythology in some way, shape, or form like that.
I'd just like to interject here a comment about how Skeletor trades the Masters in for the evil Lord Zodac and them. It was really interesting to me that Skeletor made that choice there to bring them back after he went so much trouble to exile them.
I like that part personally.
I liked it. I mean, I loved it. I just thought it was interesting. I was just kind of wondering where that came from for your perspective, Dan.
As far as what you mean, Skeletor? What's the question?
Okay. Skeletor went to so much trouble to banish all the Masters, and then he banishes the evil horde to trade in the Masters. What is your thoughts on that kind of scene there?
I thought it was a kind of. Can I swear on this show?
Yeah, I'll believe. Yeah.
Sure.
I think it was his. Oh well, f*** it. I think that's what he was doing.
Well, it's been shown in different stories. Skeletor will do whatever it takes for him to keep the upper hand. So
That's
the idea that he brought in the people that he knew were going to be able to take care of business in that situation, that's why I loved it. I was like, he went to the good guys because he knows the good guys are going to fight it. This is great, you know?
Right.
So.
Well, there's that theme of Skeletor. You know, he was talking about how he stopped defeating himself, right?
Yeah.
Because he would do himself in, you know, plenty of times when he's fighting He-Man.
Yeah.
This
Skeletor seemed like he had. It's like those people who say, like, you see these guys that are like go from nothing to millionaires, to billionaires, or maybe they lose it all, or maybe they keep it all. But a lot of the stuff they end up saying is it doesn't matter how much you achieve and how much you have and all that stuff. At the same insecurities still exist, and I think maybe that Skeletor probably reached that point. That's kind of what I took from it. It's like he got the castle, he got everything, and things are the way they are now, and like he didn't seem happy.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of got that vibe because I was thinking when I saw that thing back to the movie line was He-Man. Tell me about the loneliness of good, the loneliness of evil kind of thing.
Well, that's the part I found really fascinating. There were some panels and some lines where he's like, he said, "Let's go home to Castle Grayskull," and no, I'll never get tired of saying that.
Yeah.
That he won, but you're right. There's time when he's talking to Keldor by himself. You see him that he admits he's conflicted.
Mm-hmm.
That there was more, but he didn't take it. And I don't know whether it was a good issue for him or a bad issue for him. At the end, did he win or didn't he?
Well, did you notice in the color how he lost his disco coloring?
Yeah, toward the last panels. Yeah, like I figured like his power was drained, like in the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's what happened. Nice.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Little
it
things like that.
Now, was it intentional? Because like you're talking about that, and it reminded me of page 16 where he's kind of like having that moment or that kind of power struggle with Keldor, the young one, and he kind of shifts a little. Did was that intentional in the colors?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because
it was almost like Skeletor was having a little lapse of goodness in there because he offers him advice, sort of, and he gives him the cosmic key. It was kind of interesting how it played out there with him.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, think about this, though, going back to what I said about selfishness and selflessness. We're almost approaching this like Skeletor is having a change of heart because he had a conversation with a guy named Keldor, but Skeletor isn't really having a change of heart. He's talking to essentially himself and a different possibility with himself. And I think those bits of honesty and the brutal vulnerability that we see as someone breaking is something that maybe perhaps we can only share with ourselves if we were a fractured version of ourselves. I know if I had to sit in a room with a version of myself, I would probably spill a lot of beans.
Yeah.
No, that's very insightful. I think we saw a bit of that in the last issue too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with New Adventures, I thought there was more. Like New Adventure Skeletor wanted to say, but just lack of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like now that we're moving a little bit, I did feel that, we're getting to know Skeletor a little bit more. Like to me, I get the feeling that He-Man is a little different. But I'm starting to feel that as I've moved through these issues, it's almost the same Skeletor.
Yep.
And I do kind of see that, our villains kind of stay a little bit more same, Doesn't matter which iteration. If I'm talking about Masters, or I'm talking about G.I. Joe or Transformers, Cobra Commander, Megatron, they're all kind of the same, but it's the heroes who changed a little bit. And that's what I'm appreciating here, that when I read it, I'm like, interesting, because then we get to that, that brutal stabbing scene.
Mm-hmm.
And I call him Little He-Man, and I just see Skeletor there. And again, I don't know if he had a facial reaction or not.
My original layouts, he wasn't in there. And the only note I got from Mattel for my layouts on the whole was to put him in that frame. So that was that was asked for, which I think is quite effective.
Mm-hmm.
Well, interesting. And speaking of changes, I really wanted to mention in your layouts that you shared with me, there's a final panel that didn't make it into this issue.
Oh, no. That you're talking about that last thing. That was me having a bit of fun drawing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things that I have. I'm a compulsive doodler, and even if I'm done like working for the day and I've worked 10, 12 hours, I will still end up sketching on something.
Okay.
And in that particular instance, if there was that extra square there, and I just drew that.
Nice. Well, that's a lot of fun. It drove me crazy. I keep wondering, like, oh, what was he gonna say in that panel?
Nah, no, no, that was extra draw in.
You know, I know it's asking a lot, but I'm just curious. I would love to have a chance to share the layouts for the previous issues you worked on in the Multiverse series. If any of that is something you could share with me.
Yeah, I'll try to dig it up. I'll dig it up because that some of those layouts, because of the process, some of them I'm actually looking at some of them right now as we're talking. Some of them were drawn in my sketchbook in actual pencil, and then some of them drawn in Procreate next to each other. And then when I sent them to Mattel, I sent them as individual files. So if I can rally them all together, I'll definitely do that.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah,
I just want to comment, Dan, that I really enjoyed the last panel, the teaser for the upcoming book, particularly Anti-Eternian He-Man's look of horror on his face. Infiltration Universe. I mean, he just looks mortified.
I think I'd be, if I just, my mission, I'm going to be the one. I'm going to be the He-Man and screw everyone. And he goes around and he goes to the badass sideshow universe, the Keldor universe, or he doesn't go to the Keldor universe. He goes to the space universe, goes to 2000. He's like, man, whatever. And then he goes to Filmation World, and he's like, I mean, that's like eating a bunch of spicy food, chewing bubble gum.
That was a damn good analogy, sir.
With you having done all the layouts for issue 3, but you did half of the issue, and then Tom Derenick took over the other half. Is there a page in particular that you weren't able to get to because Tom took it over that you really were hoping, hey, I would love to have done this one instead, or whatever, or were you happy with what you had?
If I had more time, I'd have drawn Tapper getting skewered.
Okay. it was nice. This big question in my head. Like I see Tom take over, and I'm like, I like both of you working on it. But I'm like, I wonder if he has that. Like, it was a missed opportunity. If I would have had the time, that would have been that page.
Yeah, no, it was skewer page for sure. But like, I knew schedule wise when I called editorial and told them I had to dip out. I said, I have, in order to hit the marks, because that's the thing is, especially with DC Comics, is they have a very rigid schedule, and there are all these checkpoints that they have to hit. And I knew with my storyboard schedule, with their schedule, that I only had it to realistically do 11 pages, and I could have cherry picked and been like, oh, this one, because this one's cool and all that. But what I wanted to make sure that there was a clean, consistent break. So I thought, once they're teleported outside, that's a good break. So that's what ended up happening. Otherwise, if I didn't care about that consistency of things, I definitely would have grabbed that, because that one is one of those moments. And when I laid it out, I didn't realize I wouldn't be able to draw it. But that was one. Good question, because that's the answer is that page.
Nice.
Well, as we're coming to the top of the hour, I want to tell you again, thank you. And I know I've said it before, I've sung your praises, but you've done some groundbreaking things in the MOTU fandom that fans will never forget.
That's awesome.
I mean, you've covered so much universe, and you were part of that design, and you just made so many characters alive. Oh my God, you made Mighty Spectre a character.
And then killed him.
Yeah.
And you actually made New Adventures of He-Man look really cool.
Yes. Yeah, you made that Skeletor pop. But in both versions for me, the New Adventures and 2000X Skeletor, that the way that you did the head design, especially the illustration for him, man, that just made me smile from ear to ear. Like, he just looks menacing and terrifying. I loved it.
as we know, you're leaving this issue and all that. We know it's not the end. It's never the end. Paths will cross again. Paths always cross. What is it that you're going to be moving on to now? Where can we see your work now, and what is it you're going to be hitting on to? Or basically, to rephrase it, why did you leave us?
Well, here's the thing. If you guys watch Doom Patrol, the TV show Doom Patrol, I'm the storyboard artist on Doom Patrol. I'm also the storyboard artist on another TV show called Legacy, and I was doing that before He-Man, and the schedule just got to the point where it was just too heavy to do both. And the storyboarding's my original commitment, so I went with that, and that is why. But as far as comic book stuff's concerned, I will be doing more comics work this summer. I had a book back in the 90s called Black Flag that I'm bringing back in. We're going to do a crowdfunding campaign in April. So if you guys want to keep an eye out for Black Flag out there in April. And also I've got a show on YouTube called Couch Doodles. And I have different people come on. I'll be interviewing Tim soon, so he'll be on. I interview comic book artists, movie directors, actors, musicians, and we talk about creativity.
All right. Okay, let me just do a little geek moment here. So, are you drawing season 2 of Doom Patrol?
Oh yeah.
Storyboarding?
Yeah,
okay, there's a second season. Okay.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's why. That's why I had to go. I mean, this stuff is right now. I just finished storyboarding the 7th episode. So yeah, I believe me. Season 2 is awesome. If you like the show, season 2 is awesome, and it's very, very, very big.
Okay, because I did watch. I did enjoy the first season, and
cool. Yeah, it'll be good. You'll dig it.
Okay, and I was excited because did you see? The Crisis. Everything now is all not together, but they acknowledged all the universes, and they had Doom Patrol in it, and they had everybody in it, and that was a geek moment for me. So I'm glad to see glad to hear Doom Patrol's coming back.
Oh yeah, huge, really good stuff.
Yeah.
And Dan, I want to say I'm loving Done with Legacy. It's one of my favorite shows as well.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I really enjoy working on that show. I've been working on that show since last season. I've been doing tons of stuff this season, and it's been super rewarding, especially getting to work with people that I worked with in different capacities. Like this last week, I don't know if you saw this last week's episode of Legacy, but a friend of mine named America Young directed the show. And I know America because she was one of my actors, a voice actor, when I was directing the Monster High stuff over at Mattel. So just seeing her move from acting into directing and then being able to work with her on Legacy is just one of the coolest things.
That is very
cool. Really enjoying Michelson's story arc.
Yeah.
I know. I'll put it on the Nerds on the Couch page, and we'll share it.
Appreciate that. I appreciate it. I'm gonna need all the help I can get because that when you crowdfund, it's basically from go. I've got my team. I've got the story written. I'm currently between working on pages while I'm working on this stuff, and it's slow going. But the reason I'm going to be able to do this during and getting geared up for the summer is that both Doom Patrol and Legacies, they go on hiatus starting in March, which means that my schedule opens up, which means I have time to draw a book. You know what I mean?
Or start drawing more MOTU comic books.
There's always that too. But this Black Flag story, this thing, all that stuff where I talk about things you do to get yourself excited. This thing has me so excited for so many reasons. It's like, it's a book I did 25 years ago when I was 21 years old. And there are things I'm finally getting to pay off. There were setups that I didn't ever get to pay off, and I finally get to pay them off. And to me, there's that gets me up, and that to me that's like super exciting.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Again, I hate to say goodbye to you, but I know
no problem. Well,
I know the universe will bring us all back. I know you will come back to this.
For sure.
More
Try
than
as
happy
you
to.
might. Yeah.
All right.
All
You
right.
guys have a great one.
All right. You too. Have a good one.
Good.
Have a good night. Thank
Have
you
a
very much.
fantastic
Good
night,
night.
Dan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We learned, what was it? Well, yesterday, right?
Yeah, yesterday.
Here, and let me just switch over to the 2021 Masters of the Universe movie page. A little advertisement there.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
And let's see here. Here it is. Yeah, so Sony pushed their Uncharted movie back 3 months, and instead of rescheduling the Masters of the Universe movie, they just took it off the schedule, so now it's dated as to be determined by the studio, leaving a lot of Masters of the Universe fans saying, what the hell?
That's the nicest phrase.
It was either that or called it, because I know there were a lot of people going, they weren't even sure if this was going to get off the ground, and unfortunately they were like, yeah, I told you so, or whatever.
Yeah, lots of told you so out there.
Unfortunately, I was one of those. I mean, I know they kept hyping that we were going to have a movie. I think they were saying March of 2021, and I had a feeling it wasn't going to happen. I mean, yes, we're getting 2 new cartoons, and we have a great comic book series, but Sony, I think it's time to give back the rights and find another studio if we ever want to see a movie.
I think that's the mentality of everybody. Please give Sony back the rights so we can get this going legit, maybe.
I want to know how easy it would it be for them to just say that it's canceled, given all of the things that are being built up to help support it, like you said, like those 2 cartoons and the Masters of the Universe Origins line. I'm really kind of starting to worry that, what is the future for the Origins line? But maybe it's a little, maybe I'm jumping the gun, because it could be that, a few days from now we'll hear that, that they have a schedule for it, that they just bumped it a month or so.
Well, all that is speculation, but contracts, especially with licenses, work like that. A movie studio or a production company gets the license to do a product. So they have the license to do the Masters of the Universe. When you have that license, that means that you have a certain amount of time to get something going. And they're specific. If there's one about cartoons, then they have to do a cartoon. If it's about movies, they have to do a movie one. And if they let it lapse, and companies do that, they let the license lapse, then it falls back to the original owner. And this is what happened with, for example, Marvel movies. Blade lapsed because they weren't doing any Blade movies, and so they lapsed back to Marvel. Ghost Rider, same thing. They weren't making any Ghost Rider movies, so they went back to Marvel. Marvel took a great pleasure in this because they want all their characters under their umbrella. Universal Studios, Sony Pictures, they have the license for Masters, and so it needs to fall back, and then Mattel Studios, will decide what to do with it. So a while ago.
Yeah, they were supposedly going to be a joint venture with Sony, who was gonna do He-Man, Barbie, and I think Universal was gonna do a Hot Wheels,
which falls under the Battleship movie, I guess.
But it's kind of weird. Like, Mattel is like giving these brands to make movies out of that don't make sense. Like, there's Hot Wheels, supposedly there's a Magic 8 Ball. And I'm like, dude, get He-Man going, get Barbie going. Sadly, Max Steel sucked, but get freaking Street Sharks.
Well, the whole thing, like in the last year, they had all that, Man in Black International and all the other stuff for Sony now is, I think they're too gun shy to do some of these things now. They're Spider-Man stuff is working. That's probably their mentality now. It's like, focus on that. Don't focus on the other stuff. We don't know if it's tried and true right now.
So I saw one article that said that the negotiation to possibly sell off the movie to Netflix fell through, but I have not seen any other source. So you tell me, have you seen anything about that?
No.
No, I haven't.
Okay, because I don't want to spread rumors or anything. I was just one article that I saw mention of it.
But it could. I'm hoping that at least we get like, if not a movie, a miniseries. Like for example, the Witcher series. Nobody expected that to be a raging success, and everybody's now toss a coin to your Witcher, and
Yeah.
it's like completely unexpected because everybody was riding the Game of Thrones train. It ran out, and people were, I'm not into fantasy. Suddenly, Witcher. He captures multiple markets: sci-fi, fantasy, action adventure. They could actually do a small series and see how it goes from there. And if eventually it leads to a movie, fine. But right now, the 2 cartoons are gonna be doing all the heavy lifting for Mattel.
I'm one of those people though that when it comes to the movie, I almost don't need a movie, and the reason why is there's too many people within the fandom that would love or hate that thing to begin with. So like you have so many people that if they don't see X, Y, and Z elements in this movie, they're automatically not going to love it because 87 burned them in the first place when they were kids. There's that element where I'm like, I'd rather just see the new cartoons and see what happens. And if that starts the love for it, maybe it will lead to something bigger down the pike. I should say.
Part of it is, why can't they just do it? The concept is not a difficult concept. You have good and evil. You have a magical land. You have a prince who calls on a sword, transforms. You have an evil skull guy that everybody knows is the evil skull guy. You have so much. I mean, if you never heard of it, if you've never heard of any of this, you could easily go into the theater and say, I bet that guy with the skull head is the bad guy.
Yeah.
No,
I agree with that, and I see where you're coming from, but I also see it from the fandom perspective where there's certain ingredients that there's certain fans who want to see these things, and then they'll feel burned if they don't get those. And the thing about Masters is it's not dormant. It's not where nothing's happened with it. Obviously, we just talked to Dan Fraga. I mean, they're doing comics. They're about to do cartoons. They've had a toy line for 12 years strong at this point with a new one about to begin. But the difference here to me is this is something that it's a fan canon now, almost like Star Wars. A lot of people have built in their heads what this is supposed to be to them. And now I'm at the point of going, I almost rather would not see a movie because the movie's going to be 2 hours of concentrated, this is the story they're going to tell. And that might turn people off that love the franchise. And it might bring new people, though. Who knows? But there's an element of, I don't think anybody's going to be happy with this movie no matter what happens. There's going to be something they're going to be missing or whatever.
Well, that's the era we live in.
Where they might compare it to the last Star Wars, where they said too much fan service for one group but not for another.
It's true.
Not enough storyline.
Exactly. And I think the biggest problem is you can't make everybody happy, and it should be a vision based on the story that they want to tell, not pleasing everybody at this point. And that's going to be a huge either a detracting or selling point for some people, because a lot of people like us have had their own canons in their minds since they were kids. And here we are in our 40s looking at this, 30s and 40s, I should say, and we're looking at it going, well, that's not how I wanted to see it. Like Skeletor being Keldor, that might not be somebody's thing. He might have been a demon originally, And so there's like each thing adds something new, which is great, but it also will detract people from the new because they're like, well, that's not how I played it when I was a kid,
Yeah, but if you're really a Masters of the Universe fan, you have to accept all iterations of Masters of the Universe. A point, you have to recognize that all is valid, all part of the mythos, and you can't just discount something just because it doesn't mesh with your vision or your version of it, to me. So, as a fan of it, I love all of it. Of course, I have my favorite aspects, but I mean, I'll just be happy to see a good live action where it tells a familiar story, not maybe the perfect one I would want, but something that is along the lines of what we grew up expecting or hoping.
I agree with that. I'm not going to lie. Like I'm somebody that just tell a story using these characters that I've loved. It doesn't have to be perfect. It could be new, and I'll still be interested to see what new what's new about that, because then I'm looking at it from a different way and going, I never would have thought of that, but that works, and I actually want to include that in the way I think of it. But there's other people out there that don't want anything to do with that too. that's the hardest part.
Well, let's call them for what they are: toxic fans. And
I would call them purists, but okay.
no, it's just that there's fans who will say no unless it's what they want in their heads, and they expect the studio to pierce into their heads, and produce what they want, and it's just impossible. It is 100% impossible. You just gotta work with it. You just gotta get it out there, and hopefully, again, you find a director who can work with fantasy action, who can make characters important, create some great special effects, create some good action scenes, and again, provide characters that we care about, take us on a journey with a possibility of a franchise. Let's see if it works.
I mean, personally, I would be happy if we just had Orko and Battle Cat.
You mean the Orko Battle Cat movie?
Well, that would be a nice spinoff.
I'd really like to know what's the roadblock? Is it a particular team, a particular individual? I mean, why is this being, where's the source of this curse that's keeping this movie from being put out?
I'll give even odds, 99 to 1. It's money.
I would say money or the script possibly, because they can't decide how they want to portray this to make it palatable to today's audiences. And that's me quoting that. That's not me believing that.
I think part of it is that, movie studios, and this is the problem DC had, was that they want to spend the least amount of money to produce the most effective movie to get the most amount back. It's show business.
Yeah.
And so they don't want to spend Avengers money. And clearly, no, you're not going to have, whatever Avengers movie cost into Masters of the Universe. But at the same time, you shouldn't have, low budget quality put into it. So they got to find the right amount and hopefully get the right amount back. And it's just painful because I think that's what it is. They just don't want to spend the money, and Sony is gun shy.
An alternative would be to have the first Master movie be something at a smaller scale and keep growing with it with sequels if the money is there. But again, since this is a fantasy movie in an alien world, people don't have James Cameron money, something that's theoretically untested. We can quote Game of Thrones or Ragnarok, The Witcher, but studios at the same time will throw back 1,000 more attempts that have failed than the few successes.
Yeah.
I wish we could get this movie done because I believe in the brand. I believe in the amazing potential storytelling that this storyline has. But if the studios don't believe in it, they're not gonna. And Sony pretty much doesn't believe in anything.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say, is they won't believe in it until they see the dollar signs coming back to them at this point. And it's the whole thing of, okay, women superheroes aren't going to be a thing in the box office because Supergirl failed. Well, Supergirl was 1986, and then it's like you're looking at a movie from 1987, and there's a whole bunch of reasons that didn't work to the fullest extent that it could have, but they're going to still look at it as, well, it was panned and it's considered a flop because it didn't make money back or whatever. And it's like, yeah, that was then, this is now, and there's a lot better ways of telling this story than they could have in that era, and we have the ability, we just need the means to do it at this point.
So, as a lot of you know, the Funko Pop has come back and seen the Masters of the Universe with the new line for 2020 now available for pre-order through Big Bad Toy Store, Entertainment Earth, amongst others, such as GameStop and such. What do you guys think about the upcoming line, such as Eagle and Web Store?
I'm getting Battle Cat.
I already ordered Prince Adam and Sorceress.
I might be getting more Funko Pop than I ever wanted. Battle Cat is obviously among them. Adam, Sorceress, Vanilla He-Man, Skeletor. and even Mosquito, Tongue is on the chopping block.
I personally have them all on pre-order, so.
Well, I'm glad, Mattel kind of caved in, and I guess somebody explained it to them that if you're a pop culture, you got to go Funko. I have a gut feeling Mattel had designs of making like their own kind of things, but I think somebody convinced them that, Funko is pretty much the culture thing, that you got to have. So I'm glad they're doing that. I'm glad I'm going to have a Battle Cat Funko with my He-Man, and I got the Panther and the Skeletor. I'm happy. I missed out on the first ones. I kicked myself.
The first wave.
You're rich. You know how rich you are, Kelly.
They are all linked in box too.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
All the Funkos except just Skeletor.
Yeah. So Kelly, you can retire now. Okay, you are rich.
Yeah.
I cannot afford. I remember seeing them. I saw the She-Ra. I kicked myself for not getting them. But
The only one I wish I got was the She-Ra rock candy one. That one is a high priced one to get now.
yeah,
They did it as a pin-up version of She-Ra as a San Diego Comic-Con exclusive.
people bash Funkos, but there they are. There's a whole store of. I gotta get myself to that Funko store in California. But they're there. They're collectible. For some reason, I did not intend to collect, and I have like about 100 of them. Don't ask me how.
You're effective.
I actually got a phone call from GameStop. I have a contact there, and they called me earlier last week when they first came available. I was like, yes, I know, I got them pre-ordered. Thanks so much for letting me know.
I'd like to thank our special guest, Dan, for joining us today. If you have not picked up the latest issue of Masters of the Multiverse, please do so. It is great, as you heard. Also, on sale now are your PowerCon tickets for August 8th and 9th out in Anaheim, California. Also open right now. There are hotel rooms available for $159, but they are going fast. So you have to book quickly. The link is available at thepowercon.com or through heman.org. As always, for the latest up-to-the-minute news on anything Masters of the Universe related, check out our friends over at heman.org. And until next time, good journey.
To catch the latest nerd news, be sure to follow Nerds on the Couch on Facebook. Thank you and good journey.
This is David Clark. It was just so much fun talking about Multiverse. I cannot wait for the next issue, and I'm hoping very much that Tim Seeley will be able to join us next time. But we'll see what his schedule's like. Wish everybody a good journey, and be sure to check out adultcollector.org, the #1 source for He-Man and She-Ra content. Thank you.
Apparently I'm next, so Ranting Crespo here. Good journey. See ya next blue moon.
This is Rex. I would like to thank everyone for having me again today, and I'd like to wish all our listeners a good journey.
And this is Sean Scavarna. You can check me out online at October Sun Art. And thank you, Dan Fraga, for dropping by for a third time and let us grill you tonight. That was great. Until next time, everybody, good journey.
This has been a Nerds on the Couch production in association with AdultCollector.org.